Miniature soldiers, big opinions. This is the Conclave Podcast.
Hello friends and welcome to the Conclave Podcast. I am Quipster and today we've got a very special episode. I've got with me Ed, the Sandman. Say hi, Ed.
Hello.
And ADR Wargaming, our legal department, otherwise known as Adam. Adam, how are you doing?
I'm alright, mate. Hello, everyone.
And we have a very special guest today. We've got with us a man who always has the high ground himself, Pleasant Kenobi. How are you doing today?
That was pretty quick. I was expecting at least another few minutes before you made a Kenobi joke. I'm good.
Let's go straight in there.
Yeah, I was expecting a little bit of a gap.
Excellent. Now, for those of you out there who don't know, Kenobi is someone who's you got into 40k very recently. It's been, 6 monthts now or so?
No. So I'm coming up to my year anniversary in May. It's like,
oh, wow.
April 29th, I think I put my first order in. I think I was looking back at my stuff recently.
Wow.
Because I'll talk about that later. But a year now. I played as a kid. I say played. Like all kids, I kind of played but never finished a full game probably. But I collected as a kid and painted badly as a kid. And then I always wanted to get back into it, but only recently with lockdown did I decide to do so.
Excellent. And just so our audience will get a sort of a bit more of an introduction to you, you have actually a very large following on YouTube. You've got about 80,000 subscribers now.
Yeah.
Your main following is in Magic the Gathering instead,
Yep.
Is that right?
Yeah. So, you say very large. Like, in terms of Magic and nerd spheres, I guess, like, in the grand scheme of YouTube, I'm tiny, right? Because I'm not a Fortnite, like, TikToker or whatever. So Magic the Gathering is my primary thing. I've been making videos on and off for 6 years. I started to get traction around 3 years ago, and I went full-time 2 years ago-ish, maybe 18 months ago. And I've been making Magic videos basically almost daily, I say daily, five videos a week-ish, and streaming once or twice a week as well, for quite some time. And I travel around, I go to events, and I'm sponsored by Magic companies, and so on and so on. And then, I decided to get back into Warhammer, and I was like, do you know what, I'm going to make videos about it as well, which is kind of a mistake sometimes, because it's good to have a hobby that isn't part of your work as well. But I wanted to share it, because I just fell, like, really deeply in love with Warhammer again, so...
Oh, amazing. And we'll get back to that in a second. But what I like to do, or what we like to do, whenever I host, is we have to go around the table and do a little bit of hobby progress before we really get into the issues and start talking to the guests. So I guess today we'll start with Adam, our legal department. Tell me, what's been on your plate for the hobby progress recently?
Tyranids. Lots of Tyranids. So many Tyranids. So,
just all Hormigans.
As listeners may remember, I decided that one of my New Year, New Army, I say one of my, because I'm one of those people that just goes, I like that, I'll buy a new army, projects is the Tyranids. And I thought, hey man, contrast paints are a thing. This is going to make a Horde army real quick. Yeah. No. So I have finished this week. I mean, to be fair, I've had a couple of weeks off as well, so you would have thought, great, time for some hobby progress. Yeah, my motivation went out the window, and I decided I actually just like sitting around for a little bit and just watching YouTube videos. I have got through sort of 12 Termagants, and I'm just finishing up about 16 Gene Stealers today. And then I've sort of base coated and built a Broodlord, an Exocrine, some I'm trying to remember, one of Zoanthropes, that's it, Zoanthropes, and a bunch of Hive Guard. So I have a bunch of stuff, and it was my birthday recently, as you can see by these slightly deflated balloons that listeners obviously can't see, that are sitting behind me. And I received a...
I just thought you liked balloons.
Yeah, I just
They're just
love
festive.
Balloons. So I received some gifts, which included a bag of bugs from Forge World, including some rippers and a side Hyerdule, which I need to get around to sort of building. So I've got the scheme down now. It's sort of orange and yellow and black. I've gone for sort of an assassin bug type look. It's when it's all done, I think it's going to look really good. At the moment, it's a lot of work to get through it, but it's a passion project because I love the Tyranids.
How quickly can you paint a Termagant? Do you think you can do one?
Termagant? A single Termagant you can do in probably a couple of hours. Like then, just because you have to wait for stuff
900
to dry,
of them.
Wait, a couple of hours for one Turby?
Yeah. Just because I do like a lot of feathering on the edges of the armor.
How many are you gonna play? Like, what's your plan for like squad size? 20,
probably squad to 20. So that's gonna be fun.
That's 40 hours.
Yeah, I know. It's because of all you know what it is as well. It's all just the layering of stuff. Just because the Tyranids, you can do them very quickly and they do look good. And I'm not saying mine look particularly brilliant. I don't think they do. But with contrast paints, you can actually do a lot of. Oh, thank you. It's very kind. You can do a lot of like kind of layering to build up that kind of organic look, which is what I really like about them. And to be honest, they make a nice break from the Sisters of Battle. Which are very, very, very fiddly. And I was going to say, I noticed in the background, sorry to go off my hobby progress for a second, but Mr. Kenobi, I see two very different boxes in the background of your video there. I see Piety and Pain, and I see Magnus the Red. Am I wrong there? Is that...
Yeah, but I've got a problem.
I think we share the same problem, as you can see from the Keeper of Secrets that's sat.
Yeah, I saw it. Cause that's I've got a bit of a hard-on for like centerpiece models. And I'm like, well, I just need at least one of each greater demon. I'm like, no, Vince, stop! Finish the things you've already bought.
I also recently did. You've got the Silent King and Mortarion sitting up there on the other shelf. So I completely agree with you on the centerpiece models thing.
You need to buy all your demons now. This is public service announcement, because as soon as that Bellicor model comes,
that's a good point.
They're all selling out. So buy them now before people just raid the shelves.
100%. And like, I honestly, when it comes to these big centerpiece models though, like Magnus and Silent King, I don't know how you even start with that kind of thing, because like the biggest model I've painted so far is that Repulsor Executioner, and that was like a Herculean labor for me, let alone like the fucking.
Yeah, but you're like you're a bit of a I need to spend 1,000 hours on the eye or whatever, right?
I want to disagree with you, but you're right.
Yeah.
I struggle with infantry. Like, if it's a single character or a big piece, I can just go at it, and it's fun, and it's a progress thing, and you get there. And I'm currently sorting out, like, 40 Necron warriors to try and get up to my 60 that I need. And, Jesus, it took me an hour to just put the basing paste on 40 of those in 10 scarabs today. It's just... Yeah, so...
We should say, though, Cripster, it's paid off your 40-hour eye, because you've been featured on the old Warhammer community stream.
Yeah,
it's a big day.
It's nice of you to mention it. I was gonna.
How much do you pay to get featured?
Oh, I wish I could pay to get featured. That'd be amazing.
Have your custodes been featured before? Have you had custodes featured?
Never. That's
what you're known for, right? And now I've seen the... Interesting.
It's so weird. Like, literally, what happened was I posted the picture, tagged Warhammer community, along with a whole bunch of other stuff, which Ed always is annoyed about.
What, the number of hashtags?
Yeah.
You gotta get him in there.
I don't want to talk about it. Our listeners are aware of my opinions on
when you're scrolling through Dark Angels and up pops a custody. Whose is that, I wonder?
The best one was when I was just, I genuinely like to use the hashtag system, and I like to just like go hashtag Dark Angels or whatever and just scroll through, and then it was just like there's this time where it was just Quipster's face. no model, it's just Quipster's face, and I just posted to a group like, Quipster, what is this?
I'm with you on that then. I didn't know he just randomly like tagged them with stuff that isn't even in the image. Like,
oh yes.
I mean, to be fair, I'm a very big fan of the hashtag system as well, and I use it very efficiently. But yeah, I mean, basically all I did for this one was I was just like, right, okay, this is kind of like a really big milestone for me, this particular model, because finishing the Repulsor Executioner is the landmark. I've now got 2,000 points of Imperial Fists. And I was just like,
that's
oh my god, this is like,
done.
It's like a really big deal for me. Because like, I have never had 2 fully painted armies in my life. So like, to finish the Custodians was like a big thing. To finish the Imperial Fists is like a mind-blowing thing for me.
But is an army ever really finished?
Don't you bloody start with this.
The philosophical question. The true
an FAQ drops and you're suddenly 30 points under. They release a new model. There's always constant changes.
Dude, that happened to me once. For a bat rep I was going to film with Liam. Like, I think the FAQ came out the night before we were going to do it. And I was on the train on the way there, and Battlescrider updated, and I was like 50 points under. I was like,
was that the banner, when the banner became free for a moment? The Vexilla?
No, this was like a year and a half ago. It was ages ago.
When the bikes got cheaper or something?
Yeah, like a whole bunch of custodian stuff just got really cheap. And I was like, I literally don't have enough painted things now. Like, this is a big issue.
I come from a world of where in Magic the Gathering you have a folder full of cards that you might want to use for one tournament where the metagame adjusts slightly. So I'm like, oh, I need at least 10,000 points of every army available to me, so I can just. And it's a bad mindset to be in because I'm like buried in plastic right now.
That is astounding. Yeah, just to finish that story off quickly. Basically, I posted this picture, and it's such a weird, like, amazing feeling when you get a notification that says Warhammer community have sent you a message, and you're just like, oh my god, what?
That's fine.
Like your heart goes in your throat a bit. You're like, ugh. And yeah, it just says, hey, this is whatever. This is James from Warhammer community. We saw your picture. We'd like to feature it tomorrow on the stream. It'll be on at these times and then saved in this video. And I was like, yes, that's completely fine. Yeah, they posted it. And I
you
was
didn't
just
turn
like,
around
oh my
and
God.
say, well, actually, my appearance fee is X, and these are my PayPal details.
I'm not anywhere near as cool as you. I can't get away with
do
these.
that. I'm itching to have something on Warhammer community. What are you on about?
But it was amazing, and like watching Peachy's reaction when the picture came up, because he was literally just like, oh wow, that's a great yellow, I love it. I was like, oh my god, Peachy noticed my thing. So yeah, I was super happy, and to be honest, more than that, I'm just happy it's done, because that's been on my like work shelf for like 2 months now, just because I'm a slow painter.
To be
So,
honest,
yeah, it's nice
I'm happy
the
it's
other way.
done, because now you have 2,000 points and we can actually play each other and have a proper game, rather than the last like 2 years, lockdown aside, where it's been like, oh no, I've only got like 1,000 points painted. It's like, now you got 2, we can have a proper game. Yes.
It's true. I was going to say, at the end of 8th edition, Adam, I was avoiding you. That was a thing.
Yeah, that was Space Marine Evil. That was I totally
Yeah.
I accept that. That's fine.
Me and Adam can start the peer pressure as well for you doing your Night Lords. So that's going to be fun.
Oh, God.
Is that your
that's
Chaos faction of choice, Night Lords?
Yeah, it is. It is.
As a slow
Like-
painter, is that really a good idea when it's like freehand central or whatever?
I didn't say it was a good idea, I just said it was my idea. But it's just because, like, I really like... Oh, this is going to sound so weird, because normally I'm just like, I am Mr. Loyalist. But I actually really like the Night Lords, because... what's his face? Conrad Kurz is probably one of the most tragic Primarchs, and the best characterized one, I think, by far. Every piece of lore that's written about him is very appropriate to his context. There's nothing that sort of an author has written that veers off in a left direction. You're like, that's a bit uncharacteristic of him to do that. Everything is very solid, I think, in his backstory. Even up to the point where, like, surrounding his death, he, like, this isn't really a spoiler, everyone knows this, he dies. Pleasant Kenobi just like, what? He dies?
I'm only 3 books into the heresy. Calm down, kids.
Well, no, because basically he dies to prove a point, and, like, he's that petty, and it's, like, really emphasized in, like, other bits of his lore, and I love that fact that everything he does reinforces his like conception of himself as
Sounds like an idiot.
oh yeah, totally. Like, he is, like, he's such a deluded moron.
I'm just
It's
going to die
amazing.
to prove this point. Like, that's just absurd. Why would you do that?
Yeah, literally. That his entire life is built around that.
Here are my heartfelt reasons why this is a great character. Yeah, he sounds like a right moron. Yeah.
I know we're doing it slightly to be provocative, of course. But
In all fairness,
But you're not wrong.
In all fairness, Quipster also did tell us that his one of his favourite Primarchs on a previous episode was Loyalist Fulgrim. Whereas
Okay,
I'm a
no.
fan of full-on mental, like, post-chaos, like, just nightmare Fulgrim. So, I don't know, he's all over the place. I love him, but he's all over the place.
I honestly, Loyalist Fulgrim is absolutely my favourite Primarch, because he is such a lad, and he is so amazing, and he gets so much stick, and I'm just like, no, he's so cool. Just read the Palatine Phoenix. Honestly, it will change your conception of him completely from being like, because, like,
Were
this is the
they
problem.
bright pink in Heresy, or was that a Chaos
Purple.
edition? What colour?
They're
They were
purple.
purple, white, and gold.
Yeah, there
right.
is actually canon reason why they're pink.
Because
there's-
it's flamboyant?
No. Basically, there's a bit where one of the big war bands, they're at this planet and there's like a chemical plant, and like the chemical plant explodes and like all the paint runs on their armor and like reacts to the chemicals and turns pink.
This is the Joker backstory, mate.
Yeah.
This is not the.
This is a prime example of the lore looking to explain away the models. They're like, oh, it contaminated the paint. Well, wouldn't they go back up to the ship and repaint their armor? They do after every battle, surely. Like, why would they just change to be pink forevermore for the next 10,000 years? That makes no sense.
It is funny with the Emperor's
like
Children
it.
as well, because one of their like big shticks when they fall is that they kind of keep the iconography of, you know, the winged talon and the symbols of the Emperor deliberately. Like they obviously deface themselves with Chaos and Slaneshi stuff, but they also keep the Imperial stuff as a mockery of the Imperium ongoing, whereas obviously a lot of Chaos Legions just, you know, get rid of it altogether. So it's kind of funny that they had to come up with a lore reason. They're like, oh yes, and we kept everything else, but we changed our paint scheme.
I guess if they gone for a brighter paint scheme, that could have been like, again, the subversion or perversion of what they were like before. But I mean, chemical reaction? I don't know. That sounds like they were sat in the writers' room, like, okay, we need someone to come up with a reason why they're pink now. And like, don't worry, fam, I got you. He's just got out of seeing like Suicide Squad. It's like, I got it. I know what I'm doing.
They land on the planet Acme and head to the nearest chemical plant. And
Yeah, literally. But yeah, I think that's my hobby progress. Ed, do you want to take us through the things that you've been doing recently?
Not really. I've been continuing our tradition, I think, as we've all done, of not been painting much, but have been buying more and more models, which is an interesting...
Hey, no, buying counts as hobby.
It does count. And to be fair, I'm good at building and priming, and then they just sit there for quite a long time. But I bought a bunch of Sentinels. I bought I'm now up to like 20 Aberrants. I'm totally ready for like the 2019 meta. I'm very prepared, which is going well. Oh, I did actually. This is true. I have actually built the coolest model I think anybody's ever built. Which I will try and grab.
That's a bold claim.
Yeah, no, and I back this statement. You're never going to change my mind. So I put it on screen for the guys.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So there's actually I got quite a lot of comments on this on Instagram, so I'll have to put it up when it's finished. But basically, the other thing I've bought recently is the Lion. I bought Lionel Johnson, and a fun fact about Lionel Johnson is he comes with two weapons. It's a cool little model. And he comes with the Lion Sword, which is the sword he's famous for. However, because you should never piss off Rabute Gilliman, he comes with a second weapon called the Wolf Blade, which is like a massive chainsword. And the Lion Sword being his iconic weapon, that was the weapon I decided to build him with. And then I had this massive chainsword left over, and I was like, God, I thought I need to use this somehow. And then the Dark Angels book came out. And then there was this idea, everyone's talking about this idea, this is an interrogator chaplain you can give the Teeth of Terror to, buff him up a bit further with Mantra of Strength, and you've got a pretty tasty little combo there. And so I was like, right, well, here we go. So I've bought, it's a proper mishmash of kits, actually. So it's the Praetor body with a jump pack, the Interrogator Chaplain head, some Interrogator Chaplain bits, shoulder pads, etc. And then the chainsword of Lionel Johnson, which, as the guys can see, is actually bigger than the model himself. It's just so absurdly sized, but it really works. I think I'm very proud of this.
Yeah.
So I think it is the coolest model anybody's ever made. So I stand by that.
I love it. As someone who takes eviscerators from his Repentia and sticks them on canonesses to give them appropriately sized chainswords, I am all in favour of the bigger chainsword the better. Like the more ludicrous it looks on the model, you go for it.
I love that. I love the fact that the hands actually look the right size as well.
Well, I actually I used the Assault Marine Eviscerator handle and then did some chopping and green stuffing and got it to fit on, which is pretty cool. The thing is, I can actually do a second, because the other thing you get with the Lion is you get sheaths for his sword and the Wolf Blade. So if I can just get a chainsword handle and just put it in the sheath, I can have a second guy who's got this just massive ass chainsword strapped to his back. I think I'm going to just make this a thing, and all of my Dark Angels have oversized weapons.
You have to keep buying Lionels off of Forge World to get the weapons.
Yeah, keeping GW afloat.
I absolutely love that. And to be honest, like, anyone who buys a Primarch model for their army, all I want to see, like, Ed, for your first ever bat rep that you do, I just want to see you play that as a Primaris captain with chainsword.
The thing is, and it's not.
Or a power sword.
This isn't a power gamey thing, because like I could just use him as Azrael. He is just a guy with a sword and a plasma weapon. That is what Azrael has. Azrael
Does he not have a bigger base than Azrael?
He does have a bigger base, but Azrael is 2 models. He's 2 25mm models technically, because he comes with the Watcher in the Dark. So it actually will kind of even out. In a tournament, obviously, you couldn't do this, but I totally agree, Chris. So I would want to just put him on the game. On the field,
I think you'd be. I think you'd be fine. Sorry, it was interesting talking about the base size thing, because I had the same problem when I remodeled Sanguinius and the not Sanguinius, the Sanguinor and Dante, because they're still on 25mm bases. I've put them on 32s, and I'm going to take the risk. And interestingly, I know obviously it's not a thing so much anymore, but the ITC actually had, and officially still have, a rule set for their tournaments where they say that older Space Marine characters who are on the 25mm bases can be put on the 32s, and you can still, because that is the Space Marine size.
Why did you say not a thing anymore? What makes you say that?
Well, to the extent that I think ITC obviously still exists, but people regard the fact that 9th edition has effectively brought in the secondary system and stuff like that. I haven't kept up to date with exactly what the guys over at Frontline are doing with regard to the ITC, but whether we will see ITC tournament packs and ITC rules in the way that we did for, say, 8th, I don't think we will.
It's good because when I came into the hobby, I heard about ITC on every podcast and every video I listened to, and then I haven't heard the words ITC, although it was ITC muttered for quite some time. It's interesting. My Sanguinor is on the wrong base size as well, because I didn't like the old Sanguinor as a kid. So when I came back to the hobby, I'm like, I'm going to kit bash one out of Stormcast Eternal and all those sorts of bits and bobs, and I put it all together. And then I then got a Sanguinor in an eBay lot, and I was like, I've got him on not a 32, I've got him on like not even like a Scorpic Destroyer size base. It's huge. I'm like, I've really messed this up. So I play it like casually with my friends, but if I went to an event and wanted to play the Sanguinor, not that you would, because his rules kind of suck, but I'd play that's good. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, that's my dude.
Mine is in another room. Maybe I'll grab it when someone else is talking. But I've got a little Sanguinor that I'll just use. Someone else has paid it if I have to, I guess.
Amazing. So yeah, as soon as Kenobi said that, Adam was just like, I have done that. I have made one out of a Stormcast and held it up to the camera.
It's just because it's like a thing so many people do, and I love it. I think it's it's like a really good kit to do it with. To kind of mess around with the Sanguinor and Dante as well. Obviously, I've done, and my Sanguinary Guard. And I'm not saying I've seen a couple of ways of doing this, and there are people who just use a whole kit or whatever from rather than kit bashing, where they take like a bit of one, bit of the Stormcast, bit of the other. They just use a whole Stormcast kit, and that can look a bit weird because they don't have the marine parts to them, like it doesn't look like power armor. But still, as a base kit to use for kit bashing, they're amazing. Oh, I'm seeing those big wings.
Yeah, so like I'm going to make this podcast format even worse by showing more models. But so this guy is Sanguinary Guard body. He's got a sword from Sanguinary Guard, trying to emulate the sword of the Sanguinor. This is literally just a magnetized wings from a Knight Astigor or something. I don't know AOS very well. Same ribbon from that. But the base, as you can see, I haven't rimmed it with black on the edge because this is one of my first kit bashes I did like a year ago. I think it's cool. They've even got like some object source lighting on there and everything. But it's just huge. It's awesome. Just like obnoxiously big. He doesn't have any auras, so it's not like I'm not expanding my auras with it. I'm not trying to cheat anyway, but you know what I mean. Where if you expand the base on an aura model, like Azrael, I guess, or Dante or whatever, then obviously it's clear that you're kind of taking the piss a little bit in some ways. But
yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is a good way of moving on to your hobby progress, Vincent. Tell us the things. I'm getting very formal.
I have been making all sorts of. I've been playing loads of Warhammer on TTS. Like I play at least 2 matches a week. I've got a tournament ongoing on my Discord and stuff like that, and yada yada. Nice. And I'm playing a Chaos Soup list, and I'm in love with it so much that I'm like, I must just build this now. And Magnus is the big baddie in that list. I've just recently finished the Lord of Change, which I've got here, who's another thing that's in that list. So that's my first thing. But then I wanted to do a video on my Necrons. And I've got like 40 Necron warriors that aren't finished, and a ton of Scarabs, and a lot of bases that need finishing, and a Chronomancer I hadn't built. So that's actually on my hobby desk to my left now. But as you can see, I've just picked up Piety and Pain because I built my first Sister Squad about 2 weeks ago, and I've got a second half of that coming. So these aren't getting open until the Necrons are finished. And I've also got like 15 Nurgling bases that I sprayed black and didn't paint. They're sat on a I've got so much stuff. But it's good because I like the variety. If I'm just painting a Blood Angel, like, which is my main army, if I'm just painting a Blood Angel every day, it's boring. The fact that I can jump between like Monster to Necron to Nurgling to Demon to... I hate building.
Okay.
This is the bit I'm scared of.
Hang on.
I hate building stuff, but...
Hang on a second. You say it's boring painting Blood Angel after Blood Angel. How many points of Blood Angels do you have now?
Around 16,000.
Jesus Christ!
Wow.
I mean, about 2,000 of that is probably not painted by me from eBay pickups and stuff. But yeah, and then another 2,000 not painted. So probably only 12,000 painted by me.
You go 0 to 100, don't you?
I just took when I first got into the hobby, I took a week off and just painted so much stuff because I thought I'd hate painting. So when I got back into the hobby, this is a jump away from it, I guess, but I said to my wife, I really want to play, but I'm really scared about painting. I painted my first model and was like, I love this. So I didn't know why I was scared of it. And now the painting is a big part of the hobby for me, which I thought it wasn't going to be. So yeah, I try to just get a day off some days and just like soldier on through like 10, 20 Marines or whatever, at least to tabletop standard or whatever. My Death Guard are all not highlighted. So I don't know if that would upset some people, but it's all just like based
I'm
out,
so upset.
washed heavily because it's Death Guard, right? And then like I'll highlight them one day because I find highlighting quite therapeutic to do. But then I'm on a shelf and ready to go. So yeah, I go a bit ham and I've got way too much to do. So Necrons are my current thing. I want to get him done so I can do a video showing off, like 100 odd warrior bases and all that sort of stuff. So.
Death Guard are like prime candidates for dry brush highlighting. I find so that's how I did. I have a Death Guard army, and that's how I did mine because it's just. I mean, whatever technique you want to do, right? But they're just a nice candidate because they, as you say, heavy wash, make them look grubby, make them look like the gross servants of Nurgle that they are. So the models the Death Guard models are fantastic. They're very fiddly, and Alex doesn't like them, but they're awesome.
Oh yeah, I hate them.
Why do you hate them?
I don't. So I'm all about the clean lines. Like the armies I have are Custodes, Imperial Fist, and then soon Night Lords. So it's all power armor. Right. So I don't like the gruesome aesthetic. Like I don't even like horror films.
How are you gonna cope with all the skin on the Night Lords? Because they're covered in like skin and skulls and trophies and all that.
But
nastiness.
neatly,
yeah, but it's not
skin.
like
uniform.
And it's not like it's not like intestines and someone's head hanging off and like gruesome shit like that.
Some of those dreadnoughts.
But then I started painting loads and loads of Death Guard just before the Codex came out, like loads of the Plague Marines, and the Codex came out, and it's basically the general consensus now that you play Terminators and Poxwalkers, so I just painted 30 Plague Marines for no reason, from a competitive standpoint. I mean, I enjoyed painting them, but I'm just like, I painted the wrong thing, and that's what happened to new Codexes, right? So that's why I'm being a bit more careful with Sisters and stuff, and Thousand Sons, I've got some Rubrics, and I've got Magnus and stuff, I'm like, I'm not painting anything, I'm not committing. I've got a Leviathan, I might paint in that, and then I'm going to stop and wait for the Thousand Sons Codex, because for all we know, they could adjust how the rubrics can be built, they could do all sorts of stuff with it, so...
Well, actually, this is a question I wanted to ask you. Like, you're building all these new armies, you're getting back into the hobby. When you're building armies and you're painting stuff, are you cognizant of the fact that, like, oh, I need this done so I can put it on YouTube? Or is it more like, oh, I want to be competitive? Or is it more like, oh, I really like the aesthetic of this, I'm just going to paint it up and maybe just pay attention to the competitive side? Is there like, one aspect that you favour more?
I would care about the competitive side if we could play, right? Because that's the thing, like, I'm here going, I need to build my Chaos Soup list so I can play with it. I'm like, what, at best we can play in June? And that's if things go well, and it probably isn't, right? Like, I had my first jab of COVID, not COVID, the COVID vaccine a day or so, and it knocked me out, just as a weird tangent.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I spent yesterday just asleep, because have you guys had your vaccines yet?
Not yet, I'm so jealous.
No, see, have asthma and you can have it early. Hooray!
My other half's had it, and she had like similar. Like, just felt the day after was a bit like recovery day.
I was hungover. I was hungover.
For Death Guard fans, you guys are surprisingly susceptible. I'm pretty disappointed.
I was gonna say this is the other reason I don't like Nurgle. I've already got a chronic illness. I don't need more of it in my life.
You're blessed. You're already blessed.
There's another side to Nurgle which Crypt is very apt with, which is just like, long waits for hospital visits, filling in forms.
Yeah.
I guess Nurgle will be like, don't fill in the forms, don't go, and just let nature run its course, right? Nurgle's all about...
it'll be fine, don't worry about it.
I think Nurgle will be very anti-vax. Not because he doesn't believe in it, just because he's like, wow, yeah, don't worry about it,
Yeah, literally. Sorry, what were you saying?
You asked about like I'm planning to do battle reports, but again, I can't do battle reports until COVID's out of the way, right? So I am at the moment getting Necrons ready and getting a few things ready. So like, a friend of mine's going to come down. We're going to film like 2 battle reports at once and stuff, and start doing battle reports on the channel. But again, that's preemptively for like the April-June time. So yeah, a lot of that is going on in my head. But really, I'm just painting because I like painting, I guess. To answer your question succinctly.
What's your setup for Bat Reps going to be like? Is there any channels that you kind of want to emulate, or like kit wise?
Yeah, so
are you going to keep them kind of live, like your TTS stuff, or?
Yeah, so no, I don't want it. I think the TTS stuff that I've done is completely like inaccessible to a new player or someone who's starting out in the game, because we get bogged down in the rules. We start discussing like FAQs.
Yeah.
They're 3 or 4 hours long. So I guess I'll probably aim to at least go in looking a bit like Winters with a hand cam, but I will be trying to spin it like I do my Magic content, where I have on-screen.
Oh, did you know Cripster knows Winters?
Yeah, he mentions it sometimes.
Yeah,
doesn't
he mentioned it.
Yeah.
I hate you all.
But yeah, that's it. I'll make it a bit memey and have some on-screen stuff and things like that. But it's a bit of experimentation, right? I haven't even done it yet. I'm going to try and probably do a 500 point to experiment with it, but I can't even see another human being who plays Warhammer. I was trying to convince the wife, but she's just like, no, I'm not playing with you.
Yeah, my other half's response was, "There's just too many rules. I'm not having this." Although she's
There is
reading
a
the Horus
lot of
Heresy now,
rules.
so that's good.
Is she reading the Heresy books?
Yeah. She's on Fulgrim actually right now. It's quite funny. So she runs a little like baking business. She's getting a load of stuff baked today, and I went in there earlier just to help out, and she was like, "Oh, why are you here?
Fulgrim-shaped cake.
Let's do yeah exactly yeah. God, don't know what nightmare that would come out as. But yeah,
It's just a phallic
while you're
cake.
here, let's do some
They make a
Warhammer
painting of
questions.
like blood and shit, don't they, in that book?
Yeah, they do.
Oh my god.
So I was getting questioned on the what exactly the Avatar of Cain was and who Eldrad is and all that stuff. So good.
What, is
A dream?
Here's my newbie thing. Is Eldrad alive during the Heresy?
Yeah.
Yes.
Eldrad's
Yes, he is.
knocking
So
around.
he's over 10,000 years old, okay.
Oh yeah.
It's like
he's-
Fulgrim, you're a nice guy. How you doing?
Let's get on. Doesn't work.
And is that, again, another newbie question here, does he go into the warp? Is that why he's alive 10,000 years later, or is he's that old?
No, he's just
Eldar.
old.
Eldar,
Yeah.
just they live.
That book
Yeah.
starts off the, I think, 20-year long tradition of avatars of Cain getting fucked over every single time they're
Yeah.
dead.
Yeah, it's almost become a meme.
With the Necrons, they're like, okay, here's a shard of our god that we broke into pieces, and he's going to come kick your ass. Whereas with the Eldar, they're like, here's a shard of our god who got shattered into pieces. You're going to kick his ass. Let's be honest, that's how it's going to work.
Because the Avatar of Cain in like short stories in White Dwarf when I was a kid was like unstoppable force for destruction is what I remember.
Yeah.
Then I came back to the game and I'm like shooting him with bolt of fire and just dying. Like, what's this? So I'm really hoping in the next Eldar Codex they Lord of War him or the Supreme Commander him or something.
Yeah.
Did you guys see this guy though? I've forgotten his name. He's like one of the, he's one of the top
the
Eldar players
GT?
in the world. Yeah, and
Yeah,
he
yeah.
had an Avatar of Cain in his list.
He just came first.
Really?
GT with it. Yeah.
It's one of those lists that like none of us will understand at all. It's got like a bunch of units in it that are all there for utility. If you don't know how to play this list, it means nothing to you. But obviously I'm really sorry I've forgotten his name, but he is famously one of the top players in the
Yeah, it
world.
was last weekend,
for
wasn't
Eldar,
it? Yeah. So it's impressive.
Yeah, it
Respect
just
for that,
does show if you are fucking committed to your faction. And to be fair, he then went like 5-1 at the next week also.
Wow.
So he's
Part of me
yeah,
wonders though is if it's a bit of a meme, right? Like he's like, the rest of my list is so good and I know what I'm doing. I've got the metagame tuned in. I can just play an Avatar of Cain, and then when I win, people will ask
Just
how.
the lols.
Like in Magic, you have 75 cards. If one of those cards is a random meme, when you place with it, everyone focuses on that 75th card, not the other 74 that have won you the tournament. So
This is entirely why I play Gene Stealer Cult, just because like nobody knows how Gene Stealer Cult works. So I plan to go to tournaments and people be like, "What the fuck does this do?"
I absolutely love that.
I hope they bring back, just on Vince's point about the Avatar, I kind of hope they bring back the old rules that it used to have, because back in the day, like as you say, not only in the lore was it very, very good, but on the tabletop it was like immune to melter weapons and stuff and flamers.
it also had like
Oh, that's so cool.
the second and third ed rules for insta kills, right? For the last
Yeah,
guys
yeah,
had.
yeah, yeah.
He had all that in melee, right? So he
Yeah,
was just
like
insta kill
crazy
land
good.
raiders and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So obviously,
Oh,
I
that
don't
is brutal.
insta kills. I'm not a massive fan of, but I hope they bring back.
Well,
tough and
if it just
damn
says
thing.
like if this scores a wound, destroyed vehicle, then But I would assume he'll be like Be'lakor and the Nightbringer and that one weapon of the Chronomancer, ignoring Invans. I think like that could be a thing that he does to rip and tear. So I don't know. He just looks like he should be cooler than he is, right? Like way cooler than he is.
I mean, to be fair, he needs a new model as well because it's literally like 3 inches tall.
Every Eldar unit needs a new model, barring the Banshees, right? I've come back after 20 years and all the models are the same. Look.
We have a very good friend of ours who's a massive Eldar player and has, you know, like 20,000 points of the damn things, and he's done a brilliant job on them. But it's like, oh man, they need new aspect warriors.
Have you seen the new Dire Avenger sculpt?
What?
It's on the base of Illith in the Pyres and Pain box. It's like a helmet.
The like.
Yeah,
we did say to him, you have got a new sculpt. It's just a corpse.
They've updated 1/3 of the model, like from shoulder up. Well done, GW.
It's got a really cool skull motif. It's his skull.
Excellent. I mean, one of the things I wanted to talk about as well, Kenobi, is like getting back into the hobby. Where did you start with the lore? Because I think it can be very intimidating getting back and being like, okay, I knew all this stuff back in the day. Oh God, Black Library. There's a lot here. Like, where did you begin?
So I'm not a big fan of like wiki diving too much because I'm an old school comic fan, so I find that like just reading a wiki is not representative of what happens in like your average comic arc. Although obviously the majority of nerds do, right? I'm sure we've all seen that people are arguing online about their in-depth knowledge of 40k and they've probably never read a book. They've just like read the wiki. I planned to start from the beginning, so I listened to Horus or Audible, right? Audible was a godsend. Horus Rising. Is it Dark Gods, the second one?
False Gods.
False Gods, that's it. So yeah, I started with Audible. Like I just started from the beginning, basically. And then when Indomitus came out, I was like, I'll give this novel a go, and it wasn't that great. How or why? I don't really have any rhyme or reason or logic to it. Whatever the newest release was, or whatever the first release was, like the two far ends of the scale, I guess. And then Watch of the Throne was because I bought my Custodes, and I bought the Black Library Celebration Sister and Valerian. Is it Valerian?
Oh, Valerian and Alea.
Yeah. I was like, I guess I'll listen to this novel, which was pretty banging.
I'm not gonna lie, that is one of my favourite Warhammer books ever. I love that novel.
Pretty good. I need to listen to the second one now as well. But
it's good.
When we're chatting on my Discord about Warhammer, and someone mentions the Blood Games, like, well, actually, it's where they hunt heretic Astartes for the Halls of Terror, and it's just like I get to be that nerd. So yeah, whatever ties in. Like, I love that. I've got the Mephiston book downloaded but not listened to because being a big Blood Angels fan. So it's basically whatever I'm paying at the time. When I was paying my Death Guard, I started listening to Lords of Silence. Unfortunately, I finished my Death Guard before Lords of Silence was over, so I haven't gone back to Lords of Silence. So yeah, it's a bit of that, really.
Have you read or have you considered The Infinite and the Divine? Given you're working on your Necrons at the moment,
there's
a book called it's The Infinite and Divine. It came out when they did the new Necron Codex, and it's basically about Orican the Diviner and Trazyn the Infinite, the two kind of slightly wacky Necron characters, right? One's obviously an obsessive kleptomaniac. The other guy is like, I'm the seer of the future, and I was the one that said to the Silent King, probably don't make this deal with the Catan, mate. It's not going to go well. And the Silent King went, no, it'll be fine. What could go wrong? And,
is that the kleptomaniac who they joke? There's a suggestion that he holds one of the Primarch's bodies still, something.
Yeah. There's a line in one
golden
of the books.
Warrior.
Yeah. So we don't know who it is.
We did kind of find out who that was, though.
Did we?
Yeah, it's because in Battlefleet Gothic 2, the game.
Is that canon, though?
I think it is, maybe.
Because there's so many GW games and half of them are shit. So can they all be canon?
Oh no, this is a good one though, so I want it to be canon.
Okay.
So basically, there's a bit because it's the first game to take place after Cadia gets destroyed. Spoiler, I don't know if you've got to that bit yet.
Yeah, no, I'm aware of that. Yeah. I've read the fluff that comes in the 9th edition rulebook. Jeez.
But so it's the first computer game set in the Warhammer universe after that, and a bit of it takes place at the Battle of Cadia, and so obviously Trazyn was there, and it shows a little intro about him, and it like explores his vault a little bit, and it shows the golden armored warrior is a custodian, and he's just like frozen in movement. He's just like running towards something, and he's just kind of there. You're like, that's the golden guy.
Yeah. I want it to be Sanguinius' corpse or something that they can bring back,
Well, he's got, he's got Creed, doesn't he? He's got Creed.
He's got
a bunch
Creed,
of other- yeah. He's got like, I mean, Ursarkar Creed, who was the like Cadian commander on Cady, when Cady blew up, he basically just nicked him and put him in a gallery. It's one of the things that's really...
Yeah.
Does he have a model?
He does.
Yeah.
He's the guy
like,
with
him
the
with a
storm
cigar,
coat, like
looking
that.
kind of
him.
actually.
Right.
Yeah.
But the book, the Infinite Divine, is really good. It gives a really good kind of overview of Necron like society and how it all works, and just how bizarre things are when you have no concept of time because you are functionally immortal. So they're like, oh, we used to have operas that were like 5 hours long. Now they're 500 years long. And I don't like going to them because they're boring. That's like one of the things that comes up in the book, and like what he has in his gallery. Yeah, it's really it's a fun book. I'd recommend it.
I listened to Indomitus, and the Necrons in that were really hammy. Like even the voice actors were like putting on like comical voices, and it really kind of put me off Necron stories a bit.
That is a hit and miss with Audible, isn't it? The old voice actors.
Because the first few Horus books, the guy who's reading those is so good. Like like chillingly good.
Weirdly sanguineous. Sanguineous is voiced proper. He's they do one character in every book like that, and they happen to choose.
So Sanguineous hasn't shown up by the beginning of the third book, I don't think. Because I'm waiting for it. Like it's like when you're like waiting for the cameo of a character that you love. Is he?
Yeah.
Where?
Him and
he's got
Horus.
a very
They have a
small
conversation.
part in
They have a conversation.
Oh, when he meets with Dawn as well
They
on
go
the ship.
Don't they go and just kill metal bugs for like ages?
Yeah, they're going to murder and fight the Arachnids, but
The murder
Sanguineous
planet,
isn't
yeah.
there, is he?
Oh yeah.
No, he is. Blood Angels are there.
In which case, he's not voiced very well. He's not voiced in a different way then, because he didn't stand out.
Well, I remember being proper like kind of hello, I am Sanguineous.
He has got, you know what?
I
He
have
kind of
missed
sounds
this.
like he kind of to me. I know what you're talking about, Ed. He kind of sounds like Noel Fielding in The Mighty Boosh. Like he's just like
Yeah.
Can you imagine Noel Fielding playing you in a movie?
I am the Golden Hawk boy. The one I find awkward so I was gonna say Infinite and Divine. I didn't listen on Audible, so I won't vouch for the voice acting quality. It may be good, it may not, but it is a good book. What I was gonna say for the voice acting is in Fulgrim, which is the fourth book. There's quite a lot of sexy time scenes, and as they do, they just get the one guy to just voice the female characters as well. So you end up with this slightly weird thing where one guy's like, "Oh no, I don't know what I'm doing," and she's like, "Come to bed, yes, come with me," and it just all gets a bit strange. It's like clearly just the same guy putting on a slightly different voice.
I guess, but in some ways, I guess that'd make it less uncomfortable. Because if you had just two people doing sexy time in your ears while you're painting, I don't know if that if that would work.
When you're painting Emperor's Children, it works, you know.
Don't. I'm gonna have to buy some Chaos Marines to paint up, like ready for the fourth book or whatever.
Oh my god. I mean, one thing I have found is because I've read the entire Heresy and I'm now going back through the audiobooks. I think it is like almost an entirely different experience, like reading the audiobook or listening to the audiobook than reading the book, because like I have very distinct ways that I think like the Primarchs sound, for example. And I've had this conversation with Adam so many times. I think Fulgrim should have a light French accent, because that makes sense to me. It's like, think about it.
That was my reaction.
The epitome. What? No, because like
It's just a
he's
Pink
the
Panther.
epitome of like. No, because he's the epitome of class and sophistication. He's kind of a bit up himself.
That's not the
He's
French,
so arrogant.
Cripster.
No,
I'm
that's the
joking,
French.
I'm joking.
I think it would make so much. The theatre is called La Fenice.
I mean, that's the thing. So I'm an English major. Like, I was originally going to be a teacher, and I ended up I hated kids, so I never finished my PGCE. But when I did my English degree, like I had this argument quite a few times where I believe that audiobooks are a different medium to actual books, because you are experiencing it through the lens of someone like narrating, intonation, the way they say things, the way they pace things. Like it does change it fundamentally. Like, so I don't know if you're just getting onto the quote about them being French or whatever is all you're getting at, but I think it is very different. The problem that I would have is that I don't really have the time to paint the hundreds of models that I keep buying and sit down with a good book and then experience any other book that I've got. Like, so I'm trying to tie it all together in some ways.
It's a particularly good pairing.
Mm-hmm. Like cheese and wine, as the French would say.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like one of the things that I was going to ask about you earlier that you mentioned was how like the Warhammer community. Sorry, you said your channel is quite small on in terms of Magic the Gathering, but in terms of Warhammer, you know, if you consider yourself a Warhammer YouTuber, you're one of the biggest. So the community is quite small. But weirdly, at the same time, things like YouTube and Audible and podcasts, they all work with Warhammer because of painting. So it's like there's always more space for more content creators.
Yeah, definitely. People always say that, like when people watch, I've streamed TTS, yeah, they'll be like, "Oh, I'm painting X today, or I'm painting Y today." Or people comment on my Warhammer Wednesday saying, "Oh, I was watching this while painting X or Y." So I think content creation, yeah, goes hand in hand. The consumption of content alongside like the painting and stuff.
I mean, it's funny we mentioned this as well. Like when we first started doing this podcast, I kept on saying to the guys, "We need to make it as long as possible. We need to make it as long as possible." And like in the beginning, it was like, "No, we'll try."
7 hours later. It's like popping Pro Plus and
exactly, and it was literally just a case of like, guys, it's because we need to make it long because people are going to sit and paint while they listen to us.
No, for sure. I remember having. I was like, "Crips, you're out of your fucking mind, mate. No one wants to hear me ramble on for 2 hours." But for some reason, they do. What's funny as well is that Crips seems to be exactly right, because the longer the podcast, honestly, almost without fail, the longer the podcast, obviously guests do tend to do better, but outside of that, the long podcasts do far better than the short podcast. And I mean, it's weird. YouTube, I assume, doesn't work like that.
Yeah, it probably depends upon the platform, is what I was about to say. Yeah, because YouTube tends to kill my videos that go past an hour. Like I had a gameplay video come out, which was now in 10 recently, that I sent to an editor, and I said to the editor, "We need to get this under an hour if we can." And he said, without cutting out actual like content of like some of the plays you made, this is a Magic video. He said, "We can't get it under an hour." I was like, "Oh, it's fine." We put it out, and it compared to the same video with the same editor, same style, same format, and everything from the week before, it did like 25-30% less like views. And I was like, "That's YouTube doing that." And it happens. You can see like in my analytics whenever I upload a stream VOD with Magic, all the TTS stuff, which I've stopped uploading now. YouTube's like, "No, your viewers don't want this," because what YouTube does itself, sorry to get into real shop stuff here, is it knows what your normal audience is. My normal audience is people watching Magic videos for 30 minutes, right? So if I upload anything that differentiates from that, so if the keywords were Warhammer, like my first Warhammer Wednesday video I did, bombed. And I was like, "Oh, maybe I shouldn't do it." Oh, no, I enjoy it. So I kept going. And then that one's now like a 50 or 60,000 views because YouTube started to realize, oh, people do want to watch this because people are clicking it or go out of the way to find it. So YouTube doesn't like you going off from your niche, and B, producing content that is different. If you always put out 4-hour videos, then it won't like not put those video subs and stuff. But yeah, I can't put up my 3 or 4 hour stream videos without YouTube being like, "Oh, we don't want that." Oh. So yeah, it's the algorithm is what I'm getting at, basically. Algorithmic or learning stuff.
See, like, it's good for you to like say this stuff, and please, if you want to talk shop, please do, because we all have YouTube channels and we're all intently listening. Like, oh, I see, okay.
I'm no expert. Don't get me wrong. Like I said, small fish compared to the most of nerddom. But yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm doing something right. I guess.
I mean, this is something else I wanted to talk about as well. Like, and it's something we were sort of talking about in the pre-show chat. There are. I personally thought there was a lot of overlap between the Magic the Gathering community and the Warhammer community, but like we were saying that there's like quite big differences, especially with like how the Warhammer community like look at lore, for example. Like, yeah, what have you noticed so far? The big differences.
So there are differences. There's
Who's
definitely
worse?
Warhammer. Like honestly, it is. It just is. 'Cause there's a lot of elements to it. So there's massive overlap. There's huge overlap. It's either someone's into both hobbies, or on the Venn diagram, or people want to be in both hobbies. So there's a lot of people who keep saying, because of your Warhammer videos on Wednesday, I keep clicking on, I've now bought the Sisters of Battle box or whatever.
Right.
The other thing is that Magic has gone through some really rough patches lately, from things from like the dismantling of organised play, COVID happening, Wizards just printing cards that are so power crept they make everything else look obsolete. We've had bans a week after things have been released. It's been insane compared to what it has been in the past, and that's like pissed people off, disenfranchised people. Like, I've had videos where I'm talking about how I'm feeling burnt out with Magic because Wizards of the Coast just keep fucking it, essentially, like in terms of like what they do, and as a weird side tangent to this, like I pop in to see the games of TTS that are happening on my Discord for the stream, the tournament that I'm running, and I popped in and I heard a voice on one of the players, like Pat, I don't know if you'll hear this. Pat, is that you? We met in Madrid, right? He's like, yeah, we hung out in Madrid. We went to McDonald's in Madrid. He's a friend of a friend, and he's been on my Patreon for years. He gave up playing Magic. He's come back to Warhammer, and then like my Warhammer videos and the tournaments like brought him back in. So and I was talking to him, and he's a good example of it. He's saying I don't go to Magic events anymore, even pre-COVID, because of all the problems. But Warhammer's a bit more refreshing than that. I'm not taking it seriously. There's different parts of it you can paint and stuff. So yeah, there's an overlap. But I feel that there's also a problem with Magic at the moment where people are looking for other things to do whilst Magic's in a bad spot. I don't think Magic will die. It's like the greatest card game ever made. There's a reason it's lived for so long. So there's that. The other difference, I think, is that the Magic community on the whole and the company that makes Magic and Magic as a franchise is super like softy lefty, right? This is a weird, I don't want to get too into this, but they're super softy lefty. Like, the main company are like, here's some trans characters, here's some non-binary characters, here's some gay representation, and they've done some bad bits where they've peeled back when China were like, oh, we don't want to sell your stuff. Like, oh, no, that character's not gay. Sorry, we got it wrong. They're into decidedly masculine men. Don't worry. So even the company are like that. And you don't see that with GW so much, and that the community that's cultivated in Magic is like that, especially on Twitter and even on Reddit. There are some deep dark holes you can go into to find the people who are into Magic who are also arseholes. But on the whole, they're very softly, let's try and respect everyone, you know. Coming to Warhammer, I have been called a cuck, an SJW. I have been attacked and had 4chan threads made about me because I said let people model Marines with women's heads. Like, the difference was kind of night and day. Like, I've had that shit for the Magic community, but it's ignored a lot. And maybe I'm only focusing on it for the Warhammer community because I'm seeing it for the first time. I'm like, whoa there, calm down. Yeah.
There was a very famous statement that GW made.
I saw
a year,
as I was coming back
now,
in. Yeah,
the most inoffensive thing you can post. It's basically saying like, be nice to people in the hobby. If you're not nice to people in the hobby, we won't miss you.
Yeah,
like there's nothing offensive about that at all. In my opinion, and it is really crazy.
There is that element, and it's the thing that I've had to like try and rationalise as well. Of like, Warhammer comes from a space in the late 70s, early 80s of like English pop culture just ripping on conservative Thatcher-esque sort of things, right? Like, it's 2000 AD, it's all ripping on that. And as we've gone on and Space Marines and Custodians have become the heroes and stuff, it's kind of veered away from that a little bit. Add to that wargaming, which then has its like tangential connections to like historics and people like paying up full like Third Reich armies, but don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Like, once you add those things in, you are obviously going to attract arseholes. And I don't know. I hope that as a community, everyone can like work to when kids get into it, they speak to people who are a bit more respectful as opposed to the guy who's like, no, I don't want brown people playing my game, like that sort of shit, you know?
Yeah.
So I've seen a bit more with Warhammer. It's not that bad. I don't want to like moral panic, like oh, we're all awful, but it's a little bit worse than it is with Magic. But
no, sure.
It's funny we talk about this because I saw a thing on sort of Twitter today where somebody had highlighted the fact that a dreadnought. I mean, I don't know how well. I'll hold this up for the camera for the guys on the podcast. I don't know how well you can see that. My camera's terrible, so you can't. But it's a dreadnought with a swastika like banner on it and stuff.
Oh,
and that was still on
Jesus.
one of the biggest hobby like blogs, just in their gallery until today, and it's been there for 7 years. And it took someone like calling it out to be like, guys, what the hell? Like, this isn't right. To get rid of it. And it's good that people are drawing attention to that stuff now, and it is kind of being called out. That's the silver lining of this. But obviously, as you say, the downside is this stuff exists in the first place, and it's just I don't get me wrong, the community I think we have and the community we interact with are generally brilliant, and most people in the hobby are brilliant, but obviously Warhammer does have a problem, and we need to talk about it, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. You know, it's going to upset people, right? But good, be upset. Like,
I think as well, because in terms of law changes, I actually have a great response to people who get upset about the law changes, and that is the Void Dragon. So for those of you that are new to 40k and you look at this Void Dragon and you go, oh, that's an amazing model, GW absolutely nailed that. Just to clarify, the Void Dragon is something that if you go back like a year, is something GW can never bring back. They can never bring back the Void Dragon. The existence of the Void Dragon in 40k is the existence of the end of Mars. Like, it's something they could never, ever bring into the game or the narrative as a mainstream thing. But you can bring it back because, and this is true, it's a story. They can do whatever the fuck they want. It's a story.
Yeah.
You can just there is an exception to every single rule. It's like, for example, there's a gene stealer called Avatar of Cain. In canon lore, There's no,
Really?
this can't happen, but it can happen because it's a fucking story. Like you can do whatever, you like. They deliberately don't do the 2nd and 11th Primarchs because this is true. You can make them whatever the fuck you want. You can make them Chaos, Loyalist, something in between, Xenos, whatever the fuck you want to do.
Women.
Yeah, exactly. So it's great.
Well,
I mean-
if they did that, that would piss off so many people. It's unreal.
So my favourite thing, and when I did my video on this, was just doing the research, was finding the guy, Matt something, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, who was the GW, basically the head of IP for like 30 years, who went on in about 2015, was on Bolter and Chainsaw or Daka Daka, one of the others, and this came up, the whole thing of like, female Space Marines shouldn't exist, and he was like, because someone pointed out that obviously back in the day, in the 80s, around Rogue Trader, they had a couple of sculpts, and you've also probably seen pictures of them, female warrior Gabs and female warrior Jane, I think they're called, and someone posted these and said, hey, these are cool, like I wonder if this is like a good something we can build on today, and I'll make a female Space Marine chapter, and obviously inevitably got the response, well, these were never intended as female Space Marines, gene seed, it doesn't work, yeah. And this guy like responded and was just like, well, actually, yeah, they were sculpted as female Space Marines, and literally the only reason we didn't just keep them in the blister packs that at the time they sold was because in the late 70s or in the late 80s, early 90s, the wargaming community sadly didn't want female models, and therefore it was just a commercial decision.
But
there's
it's
no
funny,
law
isn't
reason
it?
for it,
Yeah, exactly. Because like the sale of stuff obviously did take, like the Primaris exists because they need to revamp the Space Marine line to get people to buy more models, right? But obviously now it's in the law and they've written the canon. It's interesting that like fast forward even 5 years after they printed those first metal Space Marines, no one wanted them. Then they're like, there's like obviously a demand or some sort of inkling or wanting for female Space Marines. They're like, oh, we'll make the Sisters of Battle, who essentially are the female Space Marines. I know mechanically on the tabletop they're different, and lore-wise now they're different. But like it's interesting that change happened that close, because the Sisters of Battle's first models were like mid 80s, late 80s.
I think they were early. So Rogue Trader was 87, and then I think they came out with 2nd or 3rd edition, which would have been like 90.
They're definitely in 2nd, because I remember 3rd coming out when I was a kid. So
it might be like 91 then, I think. For them.
Yeah, because the 2nd
they were
Sisters is the I can't show you what I'm doing, but the leg up on the knee up, the what's her name?
Oh,
the famous picture,
the famous one, yeah.
I bought the
and then she's now got a
Canoness Verdian. This one.
Viridian, yeah, nice.
Yeah.
I can't stop. It's an addiction.
No, honestly, I think I'm much like you in that I have lots of armies. And I think you're going to end up with the same. I love the Sisters. They're flipping awesome, and they're such cool sculpts.
It helps that they're also just really good right now. Like if you play with them on tabletop as well.
I am looking forward to the new tank and the Nundams, the robot ladies.
Those
are so cool.
Do you like the new tank?
I do, because
I think it's great.
I really like the idea, and again, this is good for me because this is going to stop me getting another army, which is I've always thought, I'd really love an Imperial Guard armoured tank force. But because I love the Lehman Russ, I just think it's cool. Like I love the idea of like an armoured division. But now I can just integrate that into my Sisters with this tank. So it's purely selfish reasons, but that's why I'm like, okay, this is going to stop me spending money on that.
Comparing it to like the Immolator and the Exorcist, though, it just feels so low key and so. Like...
It isn't as extra as it could be, right? I think it sticks some more gilding on it will be good.
It needs a cathedral tower on the top. That's what it needs.
Yeah.
I actually hope they do this a little bit more with some of the Sister stuff. For me, it's keeping the Predator around. I think that's what it is. It's that this is an iconic unit there. I think they're probably having conversations as we speak, talking about what we're going to do about the future of Terminators and these iconic, because they obviously, exactly as you say.
I will riot if they take Terminators out of this game.
Well, exactly as you say that they had to bring in Primaris, but they will keep Terminators around because they are the iconic unit. They will never get rid of them completely, but they're probably going to decide, will we Primarisify them? Will we say that you can take them at other detachments or whatever? How are we going to go forward with that? And this is an example of this. To me, that's what I think it is this is them saying, like, look, the Predator is this iconic unit. We can't get rid of it. We can't get rid of the Rhino chassis. So let's just move it to a different faction. And it's actually kind of an elegant solution, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, to be honest, if I look at the direction of where I think GW is going to go, I look at the artwork, because there's this whole big thing that GW do at the moment, especially that their artwork, yeah, exactly. The artwork is fantastic, but also, if you notice, all the new stuff is a lot less conceptual than like 3rd edition, for example. If you look in the 3rd edition rulebook, there's a whole bunch of stuff. And you're like, that's cool. What's that? Oh, it's a made-up thing for this piece of art. Now, you can buy basically everything you see in any codex artwork thing or in the rulebook.
What also stops happening is that we don't get Easter eggs for coming stuff, right? Because the third ed codex, where we saw Kroot for the first time, not codex, sorry, the core rulebook, right? The Kroot were in a shot of other Xenos in the fluff.
Yeah, it was Kroot, Necrons, and there was some other stuff as well.
Yeah.
It was a background bit.
But we don't get that anymore because we don't get new factions, obviously. But I like the idea that we're going to see the squats were mentioned in one of the Psychic Awakenings, right? In one of the comms things. The idea that they might bring squats back as a dwarf diehard for D&D. I'm in.
They've brought one. They've got one squat, right? In two of them,
Rogue
the two brothers
Trader.
in Blackstone Fortress.
Yeah.
And sorry, the reason I held up sorry, we're on camera here. I'm holding up a Drakari Codex, the new Drakari Codex. The reason I do that is to reference the art is because that's a lady, right? It's one of the things I like talking about representation in the game. They're bringing in more and more of this, and on the front cover of this Drakari Codex, there are sort of 4 Drakari in the foreground. 3 of them are female. That's good, right? It's bringing more of that in, and it's little changes like that, and I think are just representative of where things are going, and that's good.
100%. I mean, this sort of links back to something I don't know if I've talked about on the Conclave. I've talked about this on Instagram before. Aaron Dembski-Bowden did this whole big thing on Twitter a while ago where he was talking about representation in the 40k universe, and one of the things he said was people come at me and they're just like, oh, why do you force diversity into your books? And he's like, well, it's not forced. All of these people, these black characters, these brown characters, whatever, they'd all be there in this universe. Not everyone in the galaxy is a white male.
Yeah.
So I put diversity in my books because these people exist. And
as a kid, I remember the Salamanders being the Black Marines, and I've come back to it. I'm glad that they've had to make up law to explain it. They're not. They're actually genetically modified to survive lava planets, and then they've started putting black characters into other Marine factions. So it's interesting.
I think as well. One of the big things I've seen recently that I just can't help but assume. Sorry, I like to pretend I'm some sort of psychologist and gonna imagine what's going on in GW's head. I'm a fucking idiot, so it's probably not true. But I imagine GW, like me, sees D&D. And we share a lot of the same spaces as D&D in London. And D&D, from what I see, is 40% or so women. I think it's incredibly high. And for GW to see that, and as we can all attest, there is no good reason, at least no good reason, why women wouldn't want to play 40k or Warhammer, and they would want to play D&D. There is a thing of Stranger Things, 100%. Community. The media did really, really help that. Don't get me wrong, did help get a lot of people in. But for GW, this represents almost doubling the amount of people in this hobby.
This is building on that. This is 100% why I think in the next 20 years we're going to see female Space Marines as a thing, because you can't have your premier faction, the Space Marines, be monogendered. Because I've had women talk to me and that I've shown the game to, and said, oh, these are Space Marines, and they're instantly gone, why are they all guys? What's up with that? I mean, it
depends on whether it pulls. It depends on how popular System of Battles continue to be, because they seem to be a faction that they push hard, right? And if that faction continues to be as popular as they are, then there's a marketing thing where they're do they take the gimmick away from Sisters by giving female Marines? And I'm someone who's I'm probably gonna have some Blood Angels with female head swaps, just to fucking prove a point, if anything, and just to diversify my force a little bit. But I wonder if they will lose the gimmick of what Sisters have, which is they are the female power armor faction, right? But I know what you mean. Why would you have... There's Mickey Mouse and there's Minnie Mouse, in terms of mascots, right? So the Space Marines are Mickey Mouse. Are the Sisters good enough to be Minnie Mouse, or do they need to have the Lost Chapter be women or some shit?
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I think that this is the test. So I think we talked about this before, actually, me and Adam, when we talked about Necrons, because actually 9th edition saw Necrons become the big bad guys, but it also saw Sisters become one of the big good guys, which had never happened ever. Yeah. And so
look at the 9th edition trailer
video.
Sorry, that's what I was referring to. And I think that they're hoping, I think, that they can just use Sisters but I get what you're saying, Cripster. It is going to be tough when people enter the hobby and they go, oh, which is the big faction, Space Marines, and there's no women in that. Just looking at it from a point of view of, will this get women into the hobby, which is what GW want. And I don't know if it will be enough. We will see. They're going to do their best, I think, with that for a long time. But then, they'll probably make the decision in 10 years' time or so.
I think a big part of it is going to be, as you say, right, and the trailer is a really good example of this. We say Space Marines are the faction, and they are in terms of sales. We know that. We know what GW does, right? But they've been the poster boys for so long, right? The Ultramarine in particular, right, has always been the poster boy. And I think it is interesting, to your point, Ed, that they are diversifying away from that a little bit. Like, as you say, Kenobi, the fact that the trailer opened with a sister stride. I mean, as a player, I was like, oh my god, this is so cool. When she strides out of the mist and just starts firing away with the bolter. I was just like, wow, this is awesome. And the fact the Space Marines don't even show up till halfway through, and then even at the end, the two characters that charge towards the camera, the Ultramarine and the sister. So they are trying to diversify the branding, and I think, we all joke about, the Ultramarines, Space Marines are the poster boys. I'd like to think they are going to change that, and that in and of itself will lend itself to promoting the others.
I got into I've been in several arguments already with GW staff and GW stores during the period of lockdown where we could go to stores and stuff. And one of them was like, so one of them, the guy was like, oh, can I help you with anything? And I don't like volunteer
yes,
the
you can.
info.
Where are my fucking females?
No, it wasn't that. But it was like, I didn't like go, oh, by the way, I'm collecting all the armies and I'm just obsessed. I was more like, oh no, I'm just browsing and that sort of thing. And, fuck, you've made me lose my point now, Adam. No, it's Adam, sorry, sad man. Okay, so I said something along the lines of, like, why don't they release some fucking box sets that aren't just Marines versus X? Because then maybe, just maybe, people's starting armies won't be... Oh, I'm talking about Indomitus. Won't be Marines, and therefore they buy more Marines, and we have the self-fulfilling prophecy of buying more Marines. And he was like, oh, what about Rise of the Phoenix, the Banshees versus the Drukhari? I'm like, yeah, but no one fucking wanted that anyway, right? And the rules for the Eldar are shit. Like, there's other factors here, right? Like, I get that power armor is easy to paint, and I get they've got this, like... They've got the silhouette that is, like... striking and resonates with people, but why not have the Death Guard or the Chaos Marine on one side of that, and then have the Eldar on the other? They could. I guess it comes back to what Sandman was saying about they'll do whatever makes them the most money, and there's no reason to risk not making the money by selling Space Marines. But I think they could. I genuinely think they don't have to rely upon the Space Marine, because this hobby is exploding. Like, Henry Cavill collects fucking Custodes. Like, you don't have to sell Marines to people. People will buy whatever. People love Tyranids. People love alien shit. Why is there no Tyranid versus Chaos Marines box? Because that, I think, would sell, because people want that shit. But they're obsessed with every box being the fucking Marines. So it's something I feel very strongly about, even though I'm a Marine player.
Yeah, I think you will see them experiment with this. I think, you are dead on. I think, because I don't play any Eldar factions, but most of my armies are Xenos. And so, I like a lot of people, I was like, GW, please don't use this as the example, because it was just kind of a bad box. Indomitus, comparing Indomitus to Rise of the Phoenix is a brilliant
It's so unfair,
because
it's so
Indomitus is an excellent box. Even for the Necron half, it is a superb. Buying two of those is like, you have not just a 2,000 point army, you have a good 2,000 point army. It was an outstandingly good box, and Rise of the Phoenix was obviously just because they didn't update the Banshee rules really. They added like a couple of things, but not properly. So it was, and the rules do matter. Fundamentally, we all like, there's always going to be models that all of us will always buy because we just love that particular model. But also, we are all influenced by the rules. Of course, we are. So I hope things like Piety and Pain. I hope things like them seeing how popular Necrons have become. They'll go, actually,
because that shifts models too, right? There's new rules, even for the casual crowd. For the casual crowd, if they release a new Eldar Codex, more Eldar models will sell. If you increase it, send out a new box with new rules, they'll sell, right? Even like if you're not playing at tournament level, like just wanting new toys to play with, rules sell models. So again, they could use that to sell more stuff that isn't Marines. Not that I don't think I've just got my soapbox about it. It's not even the problem we were talking about. I'm sorry. I just feel passionately.
I mean, going back a little bit to talking about representation in the hobby, I think one of the big tests that we're going to see over the next 10 years or so, really, is how is the community going to react to a lot more women coming into the hobby? If we not well, basically. And I think it is going to be up to YouTube channels, podcasts like this, to essentially kind of show the way a little bit and be like, stop being assholes. Like, women deserve a place in this hobby, 100%.
I mean, there's also things of like getting guests on as well, right? Like, I try and get guests on of different cultural backgrounds and colour and women as well. I mean, I have to purge comments sometimes because they're just shitty, but I think it's weird. I think Magic has gone through a lot of the shit that Warhammer's going through, but like a little bit ahead. We're still struggling. There's still conversations about how do you treat women in the gaming space and what's okay to say and stuff like that. And the same with competitive as well. Like I feel like Warhammer is like in its stage of like growing its tournament scene, but Magic's already done that. And we're now in the stage where the main company doesn't give a shit about tournament scenes anymore, just trying to downplay it. So we're like on that part of the curve. But it happens with representation. It happens with the space and the inclusivity of the space as well. Magic's had this like, you know, how do we treat women? Are we treating them correctly? And the growth, and we've seen growth in women that play and content creators. Like half the prominent streamers for MTG Arena these days are women. And that wasn't the case when I started making videos. So it's changed that much in 5 years or 3 years. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And the young people care so much about this.
Well, there's an element of cultivating the community that you want as well, right? It's not just a case of you do X because you don't want to be punished. It's you do X because you want the community around you and the community that you foster in the future to do better. So like from the day dot, I've been explicitly vocal about how people like keep politics out of our game, and I'm like, no, that's not who I am. And politics affects people all the time. The idea that you can't be political comes from a place of privilege, right? You cannot be political if you're like a white passing male because none of these things matter to you, right? So I've always tried to, and still do to this day, is cultivate a community where we are inclusive and we are respectful. Like I put pronouns on my D&D stream the other day, and someone in the chat was like, "Why are there pronouns? Because you're all none of you are trans." I'm like, "Yeah, but when we have someone who's trans on, it doesn't have to be a big thing. The whole point is you normalise and open it up for people." And that person in the comments in the chat, said, "No, fair enough." Like they came in a bit hostile to it, but sometimes they just need to be introduced to it. So you can cultivate that community and you can grow stuff. And I've had people on my Discord, on my Patreon, who've come in, been shitty, have been ejected from the community, and they've come back later because they've been ejected by me and other members of the community as well from their spaces, and been like, "You've made me like look inward at myself and the shit that I've internalized from my parents or my grandparents or whatever, and realize that they weren't the way." So it's not just about punishment; it's about improving the space and growing a community that I think will foster a positive outlook in the future. It sounds very airy-fairy, I know, but it's true. Like that's just the way it is,
works.
right?
It works. I think it's
100%.
One interesting thing, just on the games GW makes, and to put my controversy hat on for a second, one thing a friend of ours has said, which I sort of agree with, certainly what I see, and I'll say this, I'll preface this by saying, I don't play AOS, right? I don't. But the community that I see in AOS, compared to what I see sometimes in 40k, AOS does tend to be better and seems to have a higher participation of, you know, women, people from marginalised groups, you know, a wider, more diverse participation. I may be wrong about that, but that's just what I see on social media. I know social media is not representative, so I'll caveat that there. But one of the things that's interesting, a friend of mine said was, well, the reason for that partly is because they just blew up the old game and replaced it with something new. And that process, although it pissed off a lot of the people it pissed off cleared out a lot of those people who were quite gatekeepy and were quite exclusionary and didn't want people, you know, didn't want a more diverse hobby. Now, I'm not saying that has to happen in 40k. I think there are other ways.
I was about to say, are you saying we blow it up and go to Warhammer 50k? Is that what you're saying?
We'll go Warhammer. You know what? We'll go Warhammer 80k, which go another 40,000 years in the future. But the
Eldrad's still alive.
Yeah, Eldrad is still knocking around. He's survived the heat death of the universe and has transferred into this new world. But yeah, I think there are other ways of doing it. But I just think it's interesting that we do see that, and I do see people say, "Oh, you know, I paint AOS or I'm in AOS and I've tried to come into 40k and I find it quite hostile sometimes." And that's sad. That's upsetting. It shouldn't be like that. You know, we got to lead the way, and I think doing those small things which you say, yeah, they might sound airy fairy, you know, whatever, but they work, and they're small steps, but they get us to a better place and build that better community, and there's nothing bad about that. There can be no downside to that at all.
Yeah, the upside is... Oh, go on, Quipster.
I was going to say, like, and it is kind of incumbent upon us as creators in the space to sort of, like, lead by example a lot. Like, for example, having pronouns in the description on Instagram or whatever, or in my case, like, I've made a point basically to paint essentially all darker skin tones on my Imperial fists. The reason I've done that is so that people ask the question, why have you done that? It's like, okay, why did you notice? Because there's no dark faces anywhere else. And I've had people go, oh crap, and they've started using a variety of skin tones in their Marines. And so yeah, it's about pointing these things out, I think, and showing people like, look, let's reflect on the choices we make in the hobby and how that affects diversity going forward.
I mean, there was a weird moment when I came back to the hobby, because I think I'm super fucking left leaning, but I came back to the hobby and I was like, oh, I need to get a skin tone for like my Marines. And as a kid, it was like there was the time Goblin Green, the skin tone was like
elf flesh.
Is that yeah. And those were the ones, right? So I looked for an equivalent now, and then only afterwards was like, hang on. Like, I watched a lot of YouTube tutorials before I started painting. I started a tutorial like, can you paint? Are GW even considering painting darker skin faces? And they have more recently, right? The last 3 to 4 years, there are guides on how to use Rhinox hide to make, and even then, the naming conventions of the paints, where these ones are all flesh, and then the black dude's skin is Rhinox hide. Like, what the fuck is that about? So yeah, it's just really interesting that even that's almost like an internalized thing that I hadn't even noticed. And I feel like I'm relatively turned on to this, or tuned into this stuff. It's just interesting, like the things that you don't notice until someone points it out to you, or makes you think about it, but not explicitly pointing out to you, but having the things in front of you that then makes you go, oh, yeah, I've just realised all my Marines are like pasty white with a little bit of Guilliman contrast or whatever. Like,
it's so true. It's funny as well talking about say like trans people, for example, and representation in Magic the Gathering. I think we kind of all got a little bit excited because there was that AOS model that was coming out. It's the one. Adam? It was the one doing the hero pose as he lands, right? And in the description,
I think it was a different one.
Yeah, the one doing the hero pose is the one Josh really likes, Guard of Steel Soul, which I hope he'll give me kudos for mentioning and remembering the name.
Basically this Age of Sigmar model came out and it had they pronouns instead of he or she, quite obviously. And then later on that was changed, and we all got excited, like, oh, is this a trans character or a non-binary character? That's really cool. And it was just like kind of not. We were like, oh man.
Yeah, we've got like quite a good bit of representation in the Magic community for this sort of thing, like creators and commentators and stuff, which has kind of like forced the people who don't like it to kind of have to normalize it. And some of them have been adverse to it and created like entire Reddit fucking subcultures where they're just being arseholes, and others have been like, oh, you know what, this isn't as... Now I've actually met someone like this, it's not as bad as I thought it was. And then we've got like, we had a non-binary main character in like the last block, and we've had like trans main characters in like short stories on the main website. The problem with Magic is that they don't treat the canon like Black Library does. So you get like a book a week with Warhammer. Magic will like fire their like narrative director, then they paywall their short stories, and they just keep fucking it up real bad. But the upside is there's good representation in that sense. And like Teferi's at the forefront of all the sets now. So we've got like a black main character who's both sympathetic and powerful and stuff. So yeah, I have to, even though I criticize Wizards for being a predatory company a lot of the time, like their social policies are pretty damn good, to be fair.
That's really cool. Adam, you were gonna mention something.
Oh no! I was nodding along. I think it sounds great. Well, what I was gonna say is I clearly need to like actually because. Sorry, slight tangent. One of the things quite interesting. So I work in. I'm one of those arseholes who works in the city, and I work in financial services. And the number of people I come across who play Magic the Gathering is nuts. I think it, and Warhammer as well. But I think it's to do with kind of the strategic thinking and sort of learning to play.
Yeah, and they're both rich boy hobbies too, a little bit as well.
Let's be fair.
Neither of them are cheap.
No, the monetary involvement is not small. But yeah.
Well, not the way you play it.
I was but I'm just like, oh, that sounds like a fun new army project. But the number of people I come across who play play Magic the Gathering from a wide range, obviously working quite well remunerated jobs, but from a very wide range of backgrounds, who'd be like, oh, what hobbies? Oh yeah, I play Magic the Gathering. So I need to learn this thing. It's a dangerous.
The crossover's coming, right? You're all aware that there's the Warhammer Magic crossover in 2021.
Yes, yeah. I saw they started talking about that. Yeah.
I don't know any details of that. Do we reckon that's going to be like a set of?
No. So
and here are some Space Marines.
We have some info. So essentially, last year in Magic the Gathering, they released the Walking Dead Secret Lair, which was a Secret Lair product that came out, and the 4 cards were characters from The Walking Dead: Negan and Rick and Glenn and Michonne. And it pissed a load of people off for many reasons. One, people were like, I don't want Walking Dead characters in our game. This is really strange. And it was jarring. Like, one of the Magic has a police car in the background, which is so out of, like, aesthetic with Magic, it's unreal. I know there's a gun in his
It's a
holster as well.
fantasy.
There's a game where they've removed pistol muskets from it, saying guns are too modern. And then there's Rick Grimes reaching for his pistol. It's very strange. But there's a lot of other things that tied into that, where it was a limited release thing. These cards are legal in tournament formats. Because they're limited release, they're going to be expensive. So it's like limited release run models that aren't getting reprinted anywhere else. Because of the contractual thing, they might not be able to be reprinted elsewhere. So all these things culminate to piss everyone off. So the next time there was an announcement of this stuff with Warhammer, everyone has just gone, oh no, The Walking Dead was a travesty. And in reality, as long as we don't have the limited release stuff, it's not so bad. So what's happening is we're getting Commander precons. So Commander is the multiplayer format where 4 people sit at a table, 100 card decks, and you play a multiplayer game of Magic. It's a lot more casual. There's no tournament scene. There's going to be Commander-themed Warhammer decks. How many? It might be just 2, it might be 5, it could be even 10 if they really push the boat out. That's unusual, it's normally 5 at most. So I'm hoping we'll get a Space Marine one. I'm really hoping we get a Blood Angel one. I don't want Gulliman, I want Dante, right? We'll probably then get like an Orc one, because that seems to fit with Magic quite well, and then we'll get like Eldar, Chaos, and something else, right? And all of these cards are Warhammer-themed. So we're going to get Heavy Bolter Space Marine as a card in Magic. And this has upset people, like the Vorthos, as they call themselves, the lore-concerned Magic players. Vorthos is a psych profile, I won't get into that. Because I saw quips to make a face, like, what the hell is he talking about? The lore-concerned Magic players are pissed off. But I also think Magic players like to complain, so the ones who aren't lore-concerned are also pissed off, because I just want to be pissed off. But essentially, yeah, we're getting actual, factual Warhammer cards, and the exciting thing in the weird way is that then those cards are legal in what's called legacies, where all the Magic the Gathering cards are legal. It's like the old format where all the cards are expensive, and I play a lot of that. I love it. So hopefully that game I can play my Stoneforge Mystic and summon up a chainsword, and then I equip it to my creature and just like chainsword someone. And my opponent will probably get tilted, because there are people who are genuinely like saying they want to quit Magic because of this. But there's also a Lord of the Rings one coming. We've got a D&D one this year, and this opens the doorway. We might have people like, what about the McDonald's set the year after? And I'm like, yeah, maybe, but who really cares? Like,
You have summoned Grimace.
But here's the interesting thing. People keep saying to me is like, as a Warhammer player, so here's a question to you three, right? If tomorrow this partnership was reversed as well, they announced that it's reversed, and we'll be getting a release of a faction that's playable in both Age of Sigmar and 40k, that is just a collection of Magic players. So think like demons, yeah? You know how all the greater demons are all playing on both? Think of it as Jace, Chandra, and all that stuff. They're like time-transposed characters casting spells. They're psychers, let's say. Would you be annoyed to see, because you guys all like the books a lot too, right? Would you be annoyed to see that?
Yeah, I'll be honest. I wouldn't like it. I'll be honest. If they were just like, oh yeah, these guys have just jumped into the, like, they've made some sort of portal into the universe. Because like there is traveling between dimensions, exactly as you say, in this idea. There is a warp that is kind of shared between AOS and 40k. But I don't know. It'd be weird. At the same time, I would be perfectly happy if they made some sort of Xenos race from Magic the Gathering. Mm-hmm. I think that would be awesome. I would be or if it was just another demon faction, a new god or something. I'm kind of
to be honest though, as far as I'm aware, the fiction or the lore of Magic the Gathering and Age of Sigmar would actually align fairly well. That
was one of the complaints. They're like, why is this not an Age of Sigmar crossover? Why is it a 40k Magic crossover? In all fairness, in Magic, like there are they go to different planes each set, right? There are universes where they have like laser guns, and the Phyrexians are half robot, half human. Like it's not just Lord of the Rings fantasy. People are being very disingenuous by saying that. It shares a lot with the high fantasy sci-fi feel of 40k, of like, you know, monstrous mechanical grossness and stuff, but.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where it depends how they do it, right? I mean, in principle, I think that sounds kind of cool. Like if you can introduce, like if you have another faction that works across both, you know, both game systems, or one, I guess, but you know, if I play one of them, so if it worked across both, that'd be great. Yeah, I think that'd be cool. As if I think to Ed's point, right, if they did it as just like, oh, a portal has opened and like, you know, Tom, Dick, and Harry have walked in from this other universe and can do all this stuff. Anybody is going to be like, hang on a minute, what? You know, it's like sort of, you know, getting the Star Wars fandom and the Star Trek fandom and going, oh, yes, the Enterprise has like warped into the Empire and is now shooting at the Death Star, and everyone's like, what's going on? Oh, Harry Potter's
that's the thing.
about.
Like,
I'd love to see that.
The 40k crossover isn't canonical in terms of the game's canon. Like this is part of a new brand called Universes Beyond. So it's not part of the
Right,
storyline.
okay.
However, the cards are playable alongside everything else. So regardless of it being in the stories, you go to your local game store and someone... So people are saying they won't even let Warhammer 40k Magic card players sit at the same table as them. They're saying, I will refuse to play someone playing these cards. Like, imagine if you got to the game store, like, let's push it further. Let's say someone's got a Walking Dead themed army, because Games Workshop are making a Walking Dead faction now, and they sit down, they get their police car out, and they get their Rick Grimes out, and, like, it does start to feel a bit jarring, doesn't it?
I think Warhammer is different thinking about it then, because Warhammer is, and there is competitive Warhammer, don't get me wrong, but even competitive Warhammer players still care about the story, and you're still playing out the story, if that makes sense. So I don't know, because part of me is like, if they did a similar thing, if they did a Warhammer Beyond, Universes Beyond Warhammer thing, and they were just like, I don't know, I'm not wholly against it, to be honest. I like it. I can kind of see the fun. Like, here's a Harry Potter army, and like whatever, and it was very clearly like not part of the lore, but just like for fun. And whatever.
There's just a culture shock, right? When you're given the idea at first, you're like, oh god, it's a hard one, yeah.
Especially because I feel like we're constantly working towards something. For me, we're everybody in 40k. None of you know it, but we're all constantly working towards the Lion coming back. And if we end up ever have something like this happen, it's like in my head I'm like, no, get back on track, everybody.
Do you know what you do though? If you're in the competitive tournament and you put your police card down, you put your Rick Grimes down, and the player opposite you says, "Hang on a second, that's not law compliant." You go, there's 40 Sanguinary Guard over there. There's only 25 of them in existence. Where are they from? So, my police car is
40 would also break the rules. You're going to play 3 blobs of 10, but yes. I'm with you.
You make a very good point.
That's too funny. I mean, going onto sort of like the competitive scene as well, Kenobi, like, is that something you want to get into?
Oh yeah, I'm hyped for it. I love it. I absolutely love it. Like I said, I played in a small tournament on the Auspex Tactics Discord, and I played in their Wanderer YouTuber one, where I got my arse handed to me by like Bricky and the Canadian team captain and a few other people. And then I'm playing on my one on my Discord as well, and I'm just like itching to, as soon as lockdown's over, like as long as I'm vaccinated, like the first event I can go to, like test my metal, learn from it. 'Cause I used to grind Magic a little bit, but I was never good enough to really get anywhere. I'm definitely more of an entertainer. I don't know if people know my background. My Magic content is entertainment more first, learning second, and then But I want to give it a shot with Warhammer. I enjoy it. I like it a lot. I like brewing lists. It's fun. So definitely.
And this is, I guess, is tough to say because we've obviously said some, I guess what we believe to be hard truths today. But the Warhammer community is amazing, and tournaments are amazing. And so, people, the first tournament I went to is a lot of people's kind of worst nightmare because I went on my own because I just moved back to the UK and I didn't know anybody, and but people were so welcoming and so lovely.
It's good to hear.
It is a great environment.
I mean, when we talk about the community as well, one thing I definitely do have to say is you can definitely divide the community into like different aspects, and that kind of corresponds to the level of toxicity, and even by platform. So the lore community or the, at times, hobby community on Facebook, for example, can be extremely toxic. For example,
that's just Facebook.
Is Facebook good for
Facebook.
anything?
Yeah.
No.
Have you seen what it's done to our parents' generation? Oh my god! Just avoid it.
It is funny you say this, right? I was talking to Alfred about this, who's the guy I do my YouTube videos with. He's been on the podcast before, and like, so we kind of relative to you, PK, we haven't blown up, but we did well. We had some popular videos, and like it was through Reddit, and I post the video on Reddit, and I post the video on Facebook, and I had a hypothesis, which was that if you take social media and you add anonymity, you make assholes, and I was totally fucking wrong. Like people on Reddit were so nice.
We talked about this prior to starting. Adam, you said this, didn't you, as well?
It wasn't that people like didn't give any criticism, but when it was criticism, it was like proper criticism. It was like, this is really good. I think you guys should maybe look at doing this and this and this. But I actually really enjoyed this, and keep it up and stuff. But with Reddit and Facebook, it was like, this is shit. It's like, I can see your name. Why would you say this? It's so mean.
I used to joke that my comment section was the nicest comment section in the world, and then that changed over time. And that happened with Reddit as well. My first videos got traction thanks to Reddit. But what I think happens is there's two ways it can go. When you're smaller, there's two ways it goes, right? People are either just quite constructive and helpful because you're smaller and there's no problem. They don't feel like they're competing with you. Or you're smaller and they think you're spam. That can happen too. They're like, stop promoting yourself, stop promoting yourself. And then when you get larger, you start to get either people who like fan over you and won't give you even criticism that you need. And then you get other people who just think like, that there's an antagonistic relationship. Like, how dare he get sent free product from Wizards of the Coast for spending 50 hours a week making videos? How fucking dare he? That sort of stuff, you know? And then those people are just complete bastards for no reason. So, yeah, I think it changes over time. And I used to be very, I always read the comments. They're lovely. And now I'm like, I wake up in the morning like, do I want to read these? Is this going to piss me off? Like, so, yeah.
Yeah, I see what you mean. On my channel, people have always been pretty nice. But I think on larger channels, I think they become more open to criticism in people's eyes, so they're a bit harsher.
I think it's that there's a lot to be said about parasocial relationships and how content creators and community like interact and stuff. And when you're lower, people see you as their friend and they see you on even footing and they want to see you succeed. And as you get larger, people even subconsciously become jealous and frustrated with it. And like you can catch yourself doing it as well. I can catch myself doing it with like larger creators that I know. Like they'll have a video do well and have a video do badly. I'm like, what did they do better than me? You can catch yourself doing it because it's kind of like human nature. But I think maybe audiences and everyone including myself, can sometimes take a step back and be like, no, this is another human being making something. They're putting something out into the world. Just be a bit fucking kinder. It's not hard, is it? But yeah.
I mean, currently I'm in the position where any video I'm in, the comment section is so nice to me.
Don't worry, I'll be in the comments the next one being like, shut up, Alex.
No.
It is quite uncomfortable.
I fear the moment the comments turn on me because it would just be so... It was just...
PK, you don't need to worry. That's the purpose of this podcast. We have to keep him, like, you know, sort of tethered on earth a little bit.
I was trying to think of a friendly thing I could, like, brigade his comments with like, some people from my Discord. Like, maybe we can joke about him, he has to eat another sausage. But I was like, no, maybe that sounds like I'm shaming his body image. And I'm like, I just don't know how I can be mean without it coming across as, like, I don't know.
We'll find a way.
Yeah.
Sorry, me and Adam have a list. Don't worry, we'll send it to you.
Yeah.
Oh, no. But yeah, I mean, this is going back to the competitive scene a little bit. It's really interesting to me that it seems the format of Magic the Gathering is such that you can have like an entire deck that will get like possibly either banned or it won't be allowed in certain types of competitive play. Is that kind of a jarring like move from that kind of super like turnover of stuff you can play to Warhammer where yeah.
Bans used to be really uncommon in Magic the Gathering. Like the main Magic like tournament scene, which is the one that I don't really get into, is Standard, which is the thing that rotates. So you have a deck that you're playing, and then the next set comes out, an old set rotates out, and your deck is no longer a deck. Those cards are not legal anymore. So the whole engine is designed to keep you buying cards, right? It's part of like the consumer capitalist part of Magic. And in that format, though, on the upside, things were never banned. So you knew when rotation was coming up. And then more recently, they've had like 16 bans in 1 year as opposed to 2 in a 5-year period, and things were a mess. So it used to be that bans weren't that common, or if a ban was coming, that the community had talked about it at large. People like myself have been shouting about it in older formats, Legacy and Modern, where you get to play with stuff that doesn't rotate. But yeah, bans can be rough. I've seen friends stop playing Magic because they've had 2 decks banned out. But they've gravitated towards their what's called meta chasing in Warhammer. They've gone, okay, I'm going to go play Splinter Twin, for example, as a deck. And I'm like, yeah, but people really hate that deck for a good reason, and there's always that fear. And then it gets banned out. They're like, oh, how could I have seen it coming? I'm like, I literally told you that people thought it might get banned, and you bought. And then that same friend went to Summer Bloom, another deck, and it happened again. We're like, no, Summer Bloom's definitely getting banned. That's broken. And they move to it and it gets banned. So that happens, but I mean, I've never been banned out of a deck. Well, I've owned some of those decks, but there's never a deck I've played at competitive level. So it happens, but I wouldn't say it's as much of a problem as perhaps someone who's new to Magic might think it is. I wouldn't, if you're getting into Magic, I wouldn't be worried about your deck being banned out from under you all the time. Unless you're playing Standard, which is a fucking mess right now, because Wizards of the Coast are just going wild, so.
Excellent.
So is it a more expensive hobby? I've heard reports, some people say it's actually more expensive than Warhammer. Is that
so? This is really funny. Magic players say that Warhammer's more expensive. Warhammer players say that Magic's more expensive.
Right.
It's really interesting. I did some videos talking about like how you could buy combat patrols and stuff for like relatively cheap. Or even get to. I want to do another follow-up video where I talk about like basic 2,000 point lists and how cheap you can get them via eBay and Troll Trader and stuff like that. Is it dearer?
Well, the thing is about Warhammer is, to be fair, nobody on this podcast is, so it's probably not a good example. But there is a very, very common player of Warhammer who buys their army and has that army for the next 30 years and doesn't buy another one. And don't get me wrong, there is codex creep and metas do change, but you're not punished that much. Like, for example, I play GSC. I wanted to make a video on this actually because I play GSC, and then they're like said to be the worst faction in the game at the moment because of like the meta
worse than Tau?
meta watch thing. Worse than Tau technically. But the thing is,
but at least you can soup GSC, right? You can soup them with nids, then they're not terrible. Tau have got no friends.
I don't like to do that, but I think GSC. The thing is, it's their win percentage, and the real reason is because GSC are harder to play. So people can do better with GSC, but most people, on average, people will do worse. Yeah. But the thing is, I think the gap is not that much. I think there is a gap, and I think that like if I play, Dark Angels or Drukhari or Death Guard or something, there is a gap there, but it's not insurmountable. And so I don't know if that's the case for Magic the Gathering. Can you just buy a deck or a couple of decks and just play with that forever?
It's super different because how Magic functions on a competitive level is it's kind of night and day. So with Warhammer, you buy into your faction, right? You buy your troop, your HQ, some elites, and there's a finite number of options. Even for Marines, who have like 92 data sheets, there's a finite number of options. With Magic, let's say we're playing like Modern, there's like, I don't know, 11,000 cards available, and then like instead of buying a faction, you have to build into an archetype. The archetypes are discovered by the community. They aren't like handed to you as a faction as such. So you don't just go, oh, I'm gonna play blue-red. You're like, okay, well, what blue-red are you gonna play? You're gonna play like a tempo deck, you're gonna play like a combo deck. So you buy into archetypes. Is there a big stark difference in power level between archetypes? Definitely, because I often play the same type of deck in every format called Death and Taxes. Sometimes it's top tier, sometimes it's like C tier. There definitely is, but it's very different in that sense. And also a banning can shift things up. If they ban a card out of a top tier deck, the entire metagame will switch around, and suddenly your tier 1 deck is now tier 3, and you might struggle because your best matchup got banned out of the format, which happens. So it's very different in how it's like laid out. And that's a very non-committal answer, right? But it's so different in that respect.
Yeah, I think that is the thing about Warhammer that I think does get pushed aside. It is possible. I don't get me wrong. The initial cost is always going to be expensive for Warhammer, but it is possible to just buy an army and use that forever. That is a very not even like challenging thing. It's a very easy thing to do. I
think your Warhammer models are more likely to last you longer. I think they're more likely to give you more value for money per hour of hobby spent because you have to build, paint, and construct and kit bash them. Where Magic is just like you don't get that. So.
The one thing that sounds very different between Wizards and Games Workshop is I would say Games Workshop are going the other way in that I think they're actually better at balancing the game now, and I think it will only get more balanced. So, for example, at the start of 9th edition, we've seen some imbalance, don't get me wrong, between the codex factions with codexes and factions without, but I don't think it's that great. I think it was worse in 8th, I think it was worse in 7th, and I think it's getting better each edition, and I think that hopefully they are adding more rules and more complexity, but I actually think there is a limit. I think GW know their limit. I think they've planned it out. They've planned it out at this point, and so I think that it will actually I think it will get to a pretty good equilibrium.
Because I mentioned about Curve earlier, where like Magic has already had its like big competitive scene, and now the mothership company doesn't really give a shit, and other people might have to take over that Curve. I think on that for Power Creep with Warhammer as well, because with Magic recently launched Magic Arena, which is a digital platform where people can play standard and historic, like online all the time, and they have perfect data. Like every game that is played, they know what cards are played, who won, that sort of stuff, right? We've only just got meta-analysis. Well, I've been in the hobby, which is less than a year. We've just started getting meta-analysis in Warhammer community. They obviously ignore TTS for the most part, or if they use it, they don't want to acknowledge that it exists, right? But they're like, a GT we've used here. They're like, was that online? Was that online? So they can't, because there's no online, and they're never going to. I don't think that's even remotely on GW's cards to make an online client, right? Yeah, so what I think is like, the amount of information they get, and how often they patch, is going to be less. But as we get more and more data, as we go back to a post-COVID world where there's tournaments every weekend and TTS stuff gets like muddled into that, they don't say it's TTS, but it's in there. Then the more data they get, the more they can FAQ and patch more often. The reason that cards got banned a week after launch on a new set in Magic is because everyone on release day was spamming the deck and they could see it was busted. That's like now where we don't know if the Transhuman all-the-time Deathwing are too good. They probably are, let's be real. But we don't know if they're too good yet. And we haven't got data, and they won't have the data. So I think if they can condense that down, we'll see a similar cycle. I mean, Wizards keep messing things up, and I keep saying this in this podcast, but I want to clarify. Every set's got 180 cards to 200 to 300 cards. 4 of them will be busted. The other like 200 are great. Thematically on point, flavorfully on point, like wonderful pieces of design. Everyone just focus on the 4 that got banned, right? Every single time. And I think we'll see that. Like, it's just the Drukhari Succubus, too few points, almost certainly, for the damage it's putting out. It's another Smash Captain. They said they didn't want to know it. But again, we won't see the data, and they can't react to it fast enough to even emulate where Magic's at in that sense. So it might be just the same thing, but on a longer time frame, if that makes sense. But at the same time, would you want weekly patches? Would you want point adjustments and FAQs every week?
Yes, I would.
I would too.
I say that, and I totally respect that lots of people would be like, no. And like I say, this is why I think GW planned it out, because, for example, in the complexity of the game, I would have the game get more complex. However, I understand that most people don't, and I think they are very valid to have that opinion. But if GW made the game for me, I would double.
But if it's all on your app in your hand, it's not that complex, right?
True.
Do you think the Warhammer community has this fascination with books and making sure the books are right? Because none of the books that I bought in my year with this game, none of them are validated. I've got a Dark Angel Codex, which is probably going to be invalid in a month's time, right? Because of an FAQ.
Well, there's no reason you can't adjust points. I think that there's really no reason. Because don't get me wrong, that the argument that there's an argument to when you tweak things like strats and abilities, that's quite tough because people then have to have the stuff. But you don't have to carry the points with you all the time. Like GW, everybody uses Battlescribe, or they hope everybody will use their app. Like there is complexity to the game, but it's not too hard to hit this equilibrium, because you can just every week drop something by a point. You can every month drop something by a point. Yeah. And then when everybody's taking this, okay, raise it by a couple of points. It's a perfect system for over like the course of a year hitting a pretty good equilibrium, and they don't use it. I don't know why.
So I shook my head then, but the only objection I had was to weekly. That's it. Like I know it sounds like a very petty thing, but I like when it says like monthly, I think that works. And the only reason I say that is just because fundamentally this is still a physical hobby where people are building and painting stuff.
Yeah,
and, like,
I agree.
Given the time scale on which tournaments take place, I think if you knew that every single month on around the same date there is gonna be an FAQ, it allows both tournament organisers and also those of us who are participating to plan around the idea that my gaunts might drop by 5 points, I might go up by 5 points. So if I'm putting together an army and I've got to paint some new units, like I know I'm not going to spend a million years painting up Mortarion and then he's gone up by 200 points, so you can't, there's no room for him in my list anymore.
You would damage tournament attendance as well, because people will know like if something's evidently broken, like what's going to get fact to be changed, and then people don't want to play in that format until the fact happens and you get that complexity and stuff. Yeah. But I showed up to my local game store to play a couple of games when the lockdown got eased a little bit. Masks on, separated out space and stuff. Yeah. And no one in my store knew like Duty Eternal had been FAQ'd. So that was a conversation I had to have with like 3 different people. Like games I wasn't in, I was like, but that's not how that is if we're playing match play. And it's just funny because like in Magic, everyone is quite up to date on what the ban lists are, what the new rules are. But Warhammer, everyone's like got their book, and if their book says it, it's true. I'm like, that's not how this hobby works.
That's interesting that you say that to me, because that surprises me a bit. Because I mean that's a good argument to say not to do it, and I concede that, because I kind of assume that everybody, exactly as you say, like in Magic, is the same, and like everybody finds it quite easy to find a PDF online. I think the GW can do more to make sure that all of the rules changes for your faction are in one place.
The app is the key.
You're 100% right.
Agreed.
100%. If they get the app right, it will change everything. Yeah.
But a really simple addition to that, like I agree with the app thing, but one of the big reasons I think stuff like that does happen still, leaving aside the issues with the app, because it does go wrong and it like deletes your army every time you update, which is a fun.
I mean, I don't even use the app right now because of the issues. Hands up.
Exactly, right. So
I want that sponsorship, so I'm going to say I do use it every time.
Edge uses it all the time. Please sponsor him. The PDFs are a good example of this, right? So I'm a lawyer by training, right? I read complex documents, and it's part of what I do for a living. I'd like to think I'm quite good at it. Some of the stuff, when they put out their PDF updates for FAQs for codexes, not all of them, some of them are very short, but when they have very long ones, and when they do like the big Munitorum manuals that they publish, until that's put in the app or put into Battlescribe, sometimes actually working out where things have changed is a bloody nightmare. It would be like, seriously, GW, have you ever heard of, sorry, this is getting into my professional career now, but have you ever heard of track changes? Just do that. Just show us where things have changed. It would just make life so much easier. And then you wouldn't necessarily, as well as via the app, you wouldn't necessarily have people who go, oh, well, hang on a second, I've checked this PDF and it's the same. And it's like, oh, no, then you have to go to this one and you actually see there's a difference. It's just about making people's lives easier.
I think the other thing that I hope is what we're going to see this edition, because as Adam mentioned earlier with ITC, the rules set seems to be more competitively focused, which I think is fine. I think it's absolutely fine if they then give a supplement, and this is like, if you just want to play friendly narrative games, you can use this. And that additional supplement can have a bunch of fucking bonkers ass rules. I'd be happy for them to add some faction specific rules and like things that are really unbalanced. Like this, for example, there's no reason you shouldn't give all of these incredibly important narrative characters 3-up invulns. You can give them a bunch of 3-up invulns if you want to play narrative games, because they should do. They should survive till the end of the game, have an epic battle, and that's how the game ends. If that's what you want to do, but in terms of, you make the core set competitive rule, or like I say competitive, it's just a balanced is the idea. You don't have to, because
there is that interesting difference, right, between GT and Eternal War. Like GT is being patched, right, like the turn 5 rules, the who goes first rules, all patched into GT with the FAQs. As far as I understand it, Eternal War just isn't patched. Like what is in the book is how Eternal War works, right?
Yeah, I see what you mean.
Yeah.
But it's I don't know. I think the competitive scene. One thing I like, again, maybe going on a slight tangent. One thing I like with the codexes they've been coming out, as well as balancing the factions and making everything a lot more killy. It seems to me across everything. They're also leaning into the fluff of each one. Right, so it seems to me definitely. that the armies are getting more powerful, but they are really leaning into like, this is how this army plays, and this is take that back a second. There are several ways of playing the army, but like fundamentally it has this particular style about it, and this is sort of how it works, and that can work really well if you know how to do it, but that might not be for you. I really like that in the competitive side. That's one thing they're doing, is leaning into that fluff. I mean, the Drakari Codex, I've been sort of flicking through it over the weekend. It's fantastic. I mean, some of the units in there, like you say, the Succubus is probably underpriced for what you could make her do. Yeah, just absolute filth. But hits like a truck, but they are a glass cannon to some extent, right? And that is what the Drakari should sort of be. They're not the Death Guard, which may not be very killy from range, but they're slow, but you get in close, they're going to cause you problems. So I do like that they are kind of leaning into that sort of bringing the fluff into the competitive side as well as kind of trying to balance the game across. Yeah,
like the spreading of contagions and stuff like that. It's incredible game design to actually bring like the idea of plague and disease into like tabletop rules. Like each codex so far, other than perhaps Space Wolves, right? But even then, the sagas are cool. But yeah, every book has been wicked so far.
Excellent. And it's actually on that note that I have to start rounding out the show.
It's flown by, Quipstar. It's flown by.
I know, dude. I'm not gonna lie, Vince. It has been a fantastic chat with you. We've got to have you again on at some point.
That's definitely. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
But absolutely. Where can people find you on the internet?
If you want to see YouTube videos about Magic and Warhammer, youtube.com/Pleasant Kenobi. I stream minimum of once a week, often 2 to 3 times a week. Again, Magic and Warhammer, and sometimes just random stuff too. On twitch.tv/Pleasant Kenobi. I post too many pictures of my miniatures, apparently, according to my Warhammer followers, my Magic followers, on Instagram, which is also Pleasant Kenobi. And I also tweet about Greg's politics and Magic the Gathering and Warhammer on Twitter as well. I'm very active at shitposting on there as well, which is Pleasant Kenobi as well.
Excellent. You've definitely said that before.
Yeah, many a time.
You just reeled it off. I love it. Excellent. And just to sort of condense things down, I'm Quipster. We've had ADR Wargaming and the Sandman on. You can find all of us if you go to the Conclave Instagram account, and you can also find us on YouTube. The podcast you can find on all different podcasting platforms. We're everywhere. And yeah, that's a goodbye from me. Adam, do you want to say goodbye?
Absolutely. Thank you for coming on, PK. And listeners, we are back. Normal services resuming, and I've had a little bit of a hiatus, I should say that. But normal services resuming, and you will get to listen to our idiotic opinions on the hobby of Warhammer on a regular basis again from this week onwards.
Excellent. And Sandman, do you want to like finish out the show for us?
I feel like I'm supposed to sing or something now, which would not be a pleasant experience for anybody. But yeah, thank you. Yeah, thanks very much for coming, PK. I don't know why. Should I have thanked you again? I don't know. But yeah,
I appreciate all the thanks. Thank you for thanking me.
Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure. And as Adam says, life got in the way, but we will be back with the normal show shortly. So yeah, we'll see you guys next time. Thanks very much for listening.